Lessons learned from the 2024 season for Civil Service North of Island Cricket Club. So we finished 8th out of 10th in our league, which was a below par performance from our overall squad. Probably lacked a little bit of firepower with the ball, and collectively with the bat, we failed to do enough when it really mattered to get our team across the line with a number of key matches. Still, I think overall, we won 7 or 8 out of our 15 games. It was a pretty competitive league this year. 2 teams who'd normally be in the bottom 4 ended up being in the top 6 and actually the top 5. So it's great to see the league go from strength to strength. And the league I'm talking about is the Northern Cricket Union in Ireland. We had 10 teams in the league again this season. I like the format. I think it puts pressure on you from a top 6 perspective in the first half of the season to make sure you get your wins early on the board, beat the teams that you need to beat, and puts the pressure on in the second half of the season when the competition splits up into top 6 and bottom 4. If you're in the bottom 4, you're playing 6 matches against those teams around you, and therefore it can be pretty tight. This year we had one clear team who struggled in Carrickfergus. They've been very competitive in previous seasons, but are probably just lacking strength from a bowling perspective. Reasonable batting lineup, but probably just lacking a couple of strike bowlers with the seamers, and that's probably the tail of the tape for those teams in the bottom 4, lacking that real strong seamer or 2 to take wickets at the top of the innings and put pressure on the batting order. So, a lot for us to learn as a group, as a first 11 at Civil Service. We've got a young group of guys, really enthusiastic group. They're learning plenty, making plenty of mistakes, as we all do. But that's the nature of being that age. We were all that age at one point in time. And it's up to the senior guys to try and carry the can as much as possible when it comes to getting the team towards its goals. And for us, it's obviously trying to get that elusive trophy. We haven't had a trophy, I believe, since 2016. We've made a couple of finals, 2 Challenge Cup finals and 1 2020 final in that time. Haven't really been competing properly in the league. We finished second in 2022, but we were always a good match or 2 behind the eventual winners in Lisburn. So, in terms of personally, I finished with the 9th highest runs in the competition and then the 5th highest average. And it was an interesting season for me where I learned a hell of a lot. So the first sort of key lesson that I learned, being number 1, is a routine needs to be adaptable. So I was only able to attend 3 team training sessions all season. I did manage to get another 3 15-minute hits outside of that, but it was quite a change from my usual routine where I rarely miss a training session, and in recent seasons would also train on a Wednesday night as well. Now, we're a little bit different as a club. We only train on a Tuesday. We don't do the Thursday as well. So the demands on our time isn't as significant. We've got a lot of guys, 6 guys in our 11 every week under 19, and they're quite busy training with Irish squads and with NCU squads as well. So they're getting plenty. Our older guys don't have a huge desire to train a lot. Demands on my time and my responsibilities are quite high as well. I don't have a lot of spare time. So that was the nature of this season as well. So personally, with the need to be closer to home in the evenings after the arrival of my 4th child in March, it meant I needed to reassess my preparation, which, as I said, was quite a change from seasons gone by, where I very much enjoyed training. That's been probably a big change in the last 4 or 5 years. I've enjoyed training more than ever, and that's really because I've gone to training with a lot more purpose, trying to understand and be organized before I get to training, understand exactly what I'm trying to achieve there, and then focusing as closely as possible on those things I'm trying to achieve, whether it be one or two aspects of my game I'm trying to improve on. And the nature of me not getting to training this year meant that a little bit fortuitous in the sense of a lot of clubs now, and I'm sure you'll find this closer to home wherever you are in the world, a lot of clubs made an effort and are investing in video broadcasting live on YouTube. So that means that anybody can watch those games. And for me, that made it a lot easier to adjust my weekly routine and have some success with it. So with that in mind, like knowing who I was playing in the week ahead, I was able to search for a recent match of theirs on YouTube, understand their bowling attack by studying them, identifying the bowler's strengths and weaknesses, particularly those who I haven't faced before. The nature of playing in the league for as long as I have, I think I've played 130 odd games in our league now. You got a pretty good understanding of who's who, strengths and weaknesses of those bowlers. I then try and overlay that with my own strengths and weaknesses, and then formulate a plan for how I want to play against them, the areas in the ground I want to hit the ball, the shots I'm going to try and score from against them. So once I've taken a look at their bowling action for the new guys I haven't seen before, once I've studied their go-to deliveries, their stock pull, whether they try and swing it away or swing it in, whether they're more of a seamer, what lengths they typically bowl, I'll then write down a plan on just an A4 piece of blank paper, or write down a plan for each bowler, the type of bowler they are, what their strengths are, and as I said, identify where I'm trying to score against them. So once I've done that, that just clarifies in my mind exactly what I'm trying to achieve. So I then spend 10 to 20 minutes 3 or 4 nights a week visualizing the bowler running in, and the time of night I would do this. I work full time. I spend obviously dinner time with my wife and my newborn daughter most of the week. I have my 3 kids on a Wednesday night, my other 3 kids on a Wednesday night, so it can be quite hectic. Dedicate that sort of 3, 4, 5 hour chunk of the night after I finish work to those responsibilities and to those relationships. And then once my wife has decided she's had enough for the evening, she normally heads off to bed anywhere between 10 and 11. That's when I'll get up off the sofa, having watched whatever we've watched for the evening, and I'll put 10 to 20 minutes in just visualizing the bowler running in. I've got my bat in hand, and I just picture the bowler delivering me their best and worst deliveries. Sometimes I'll talk it through like a commentary, but given I'm in control of the bat, I can control a lot easier the pictures that I'm seeing in my mind when I'm visualizing that particular bowler, his action, running in and bowling and delivering, and then me practicing the shots I want to. So yeah, it's just a matter of running through that process. I generally try and focus on, if I've got a lot of time and I'm really engaged in it, I'll play out a whole innings, which can take a bit longer, maybe 30 minutes, where you are literally playing your ones, twos, fours, sixes. You're visualizing those. What I did towards the end of the season, once time became more and more, or less and less ultimately, once I had less time, I just focused on the boundary scoring options. So for each bowler, I would try and picture scoring maybe 4 boundaries against that particular bowler. So if it was a seamer and they were quick, maybe it was a pull shot, cut shot. When they missed their length full, I drive down the ground, just hitting into those areas I want to. For the spinner or spinners, it's using your feet. If that's where you want to score, then it's sweeping when they lose their line, whatever the case may be, being really clear where you're trying to hit each bowler. And in the end, all of that accumulated mental practice just helped me to turn up at the ground on match day feeling comfortable and confident in my ability to handle the bowler's best delivery, and then also put their worst ball to the boundary, despite the fact that I hadn't physically hit any balls during the week. If you want me to go into any more detail with that, I can do on other podcasts, but in the interest of pushing forward with this one, I'm going to move to number 2. The second lesson I learned in 2024 is setting motivational targets enhances focus. So at the start of the season, I checked our club records, and I am a nuffy, a stato, a nerd, whatever you want to call it. That's me. I've always loved numbers. I work in analytics, my day job. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm interested in personal finance, which is heavily focused on numbers. It's the same with cricket. I just seem to get motivated by numbers. It spins my wheels. And so I've always kept a close eye on our club's highest run scorer since the Cricket Europe Ireland website started taking records, which was around the 2006 season, I believe, for us. Some other clubs have been around longer than us, so they've got longer records. But yeah, since 2006, I believe our highest run scorer was Nigel Jones. He's in around 5,400 runs, averaging 41, I think. And I, at the start of the season, was sitting in and around just under 4,000 runs, I think. So I needed another 1,260 to pass him. I looked at my last season, being the 2023 season, and I'd seen that I scored 582 runs, which was okay. I hadn't scored 100, which is a big marker for me, whether I've had a good year. I hadn't scored 100. I'd made some good contributions without really having a really good day out. So 582 at I think 40 odd, early 40s as an average. So using that as a guide, I thought I'd stretch myself by aiming for 650 over the next 2 seasons, which would get me past Jonesy's record for highest club run scorer. And that really, to be honest, it might sound silly. I mean, you guys might have outcome goals of, being selected for certain teams, making a certain number of runs, scoring hundreds, etc. Whatever it is that motivates you, identify it and utilize it to give you the emotion you need to act, to get out of bed in the morning, to get to the gym, to go for a run on those freezing cold winter mornings. Whatever it is that you need to do, you need motivation at certain stages of the year. And if you can find that thing that motivates you, then that's a key, really. So what I did to help me with this is it's easy to have an overall season goal and to kind of let it just permeate, to let it sort of drift at times, especially if you're having a couple of difficult weeks. So what I've done over the last 2 years is I've actually tracked on an Excel spreadsheet how many runs I'm scoring per month. And for me, that's great because it just means I can break my total goal down into smaller targets. So we start the season in April. We generally only get one fixture in. Then 2023, we've got a couple of games in April. 2024, this year, we didn't. The weather wasn't flash. So April, I kind of treat as a bit of a bonus month. If I get any runs in that, that's great. But generally speaking, I'm trying to score 150 runs each month: May, June, July, August. 150 runs each of those months. Bearing in mind, with my responsibilities as a father, I don't play every single game. I've played 17, I think, for the last 3 seasons in a row. So the top teams are playing in around 25. So I'm missing maybe 5 or 6 games. We don't always play 25, but we play sort of early, mid-20 number of games. So I'm missing out on those innings. So I need to be as productive as possible from the remaining innings. Very clear of that. And this sort of monthly goal helps me tick over. So I just track runs, innings, not outs, average, and then my cumulative average for the season for each month. And it just gives me a good chance to identify how I'm tracking. It also means that if I'm, in and around that goal of 150 runs, it gives me a little boost. My overall season goal might not be high. In terms of my overall season performance, might not be high, but if I can just keep ticking along, I can reset each month, start from 0 and try and push for that 150 again. As you can see with the graphic, in 2024, I had 2 months there, June and August, where I was in and around that 200 runs, which made a huge difference in the end, where I managed to get 697 runs in the season. And I had a pretty quiet July where we only had 2 fixtures and weather was poor. And so those fixtures were played on wickets that were tough to score on. So, yeah, once again, whatever floats your boat, if this is something that interests you, give it a try. Try and work out whether this is another addition to your game that will help you achieve your goals. So going into the final game of the season, which was in the end a dead rubber against the club, our local rival COYMS, I needed another 72 runs to reach the 650 run mark that I was trying to achieve at the start of the season. So I thought that was quite a tough one to achieve. I actually spoke to my kids about it on the way to the ground. I said, here's what I need. What do you think, guys? Do you think I can make it? My oldest son said no, and I said, yeah, it's going to be tough, isn't it? Sometimes I quite like lowering expectations. I feel like in the past, when my expectations on myself have been really high, you can tend to get a bit overawed by it and stop focusing on the task at hand. So it was present in the back of my mind as I batted. It was nice to tick that number off once I got to 72. We have scoreboards at our grounds where it shows the two present batsmen and the number of runs that they're on. So that was great to tick that off. However, when I was batting, I recall very distinctly acknowledging that 72 was great to tick off 650, but if I got out without pushing on for 100, bearing in mind we had actually batted first, and it is a lot easier scoring 100 batting first than chasing. Just the nature of the beast, when you can probably play a little bit below the line in terms of the line between taking too much risk and not taking enough risk. If you can find that perfect line in between, that perfect balance in between those two, you can sit underneath the line a little bit more when you're batting first, because you're always trying to assess conditions and assess bowlers, etc. Chasing, you're managing resources in a different way, so it's a completely different mental process. But I just realised that I wasn't going to be happy with 70. I wanted to push on. I hadn't scored 105 years. That was a huge motivation for me all this season. And once I got to 100, focus then shifting on trying to make my highest score for the club. I think I scored my 100 in around the 40th over, which meant I knew I had another 30 balls, and my highest score for the club is 139 not out. So I was trying to give myself the best opportunity to score that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. My day ended on 119. So while these little targets are self-centered, and people listening could consider it to be very selfish the way I'm thinking here, I'm acutely aware that the runs I score benefit the team. And depending on the makeup of your side, you might be a key batsman in your side. Generally speaking, the momentum of the team's performance revolves around somebody being in and at least being able to rotate the striker from one end. Obviously, best case scenario, you get two guys who are in, who are batting beautifully, scoring boundaries when the boundary ball arrives, and then able to rotate the strike in between times. That's best case scenario, but every batsman comes to the crease, is at a different stage of their career, has a moving target in terms of their own level of confidence at that particular point in time, might be battling, self-doubt, a whole range of emotions, and you can very quickly lose momentum. So to push through that and make some good partnerships and get the team, I think I got out, score around 270. We ended up making 300, which we did well too in the end. Gave us a good chance of getting a win against our local rivals. So that meant that, unfortunately, Taron Kun played a great innings to get 100 not out. We dropped him with about 40 runs needed. He carried their team towards the end of the innings. A couple of nice contributions from other batsmen, but 100 not out off about 80 balls, I think it was, and he got them home maybe with a ball to spare from the last ball of the game. So disappointing way to end, especially scoring 100. A losing 100, regardless of what the grade cricketer says, a losing 100 is meant to feel better. It doesn't. A losing 100 makes you feel like you didn't do enough, and despite it being a good day, you still weren't good enough. So ended up finishing the season 697 runs at an average of more than 53 and a strike rate of 79. 450s in 117 innings. It meant I was making a 50-plus score once every 3 innings-ish. So I was pleased with that return. However, when I look back at each innings, I can still see that I've left plenty of runs on the table, and it's this which is going to motivate me into next season to at least repeat the dose, try and get around 700 again, past Jonesy, and become the highest run scorer for the club. Once I tick that off, then 6,000 is the aim. So, and then also 10 hundreds is the aim. 10. I've got 7 now for civil service. I want to push on to 10, which would be really enjoyable to achieve. So, third goal, the power of visualization, as I referred to before. So, I've done a whole article on this, and it's something that I'll allude to more, and I'll probably do a specific podcast focusing on the power of visualization. So, I won't go into too much detail here. In essence, and as succinctly as I can put it, visualization, when done effectively, can help give you a level of confidence that you can't maintain through just simply hitting balls. Confidence can fluctuate. Your outcomes in terms of how you're feeling the ball on the bat and whether you're hitting the middle or edging the ball or playing a missing, that can have a big impact on how confident you are. And if you're doing visualization effectively, you're in complete control. There's no ball that keeps low. There's no ball that swings and seams. You can control the ball coming at you and the ball coming off the middle of the bat in your mind. And the beauty of visualization is that you're tapping into your subconscious mind. And as I understand it, the subconscious part of the brain does not know the difference between a real or an imagined image. And that's the beauty of it. You can imagine an outcome, you can imagine images in your mind of you batting successfully, and your subconscious helps you to feel good about that. So we'll leave it there for now. Love of the game goes a long way. So in case you hadn't already noticed, I genuinely love batting. I love the uncertainty, or I've learned to love the uncertainty you feel when you're driving to the ground in the morning thinking, what's today going to bring? And you're wondering, have I prepared as well as I can? I love the moments in the field where I'm trying to understand how the pitch is playing, say if we're bowling first, so that I can adjust my approach when it's my turn to bat, take as much information from watching how the other batsmen are batting. Are they struggling with any particular types of bowlers or deliveries? Is the ball keeping low, bouncing, etc.? That in theory, and the way I like to look at it, is it gives me a head start if we're chasing. I can understand what the challenges are and gives me less time observing what's going on while I'm batting. I simply, as I've got older, I just love being out in the middle and trying to clear my mind, let my instinct take over during those milliseconds after the ball leaves the bowler's hand. As I've alluded to on numerous occasions, I haven't always felt like that. It's a lot easier to enjoy the process when you're not hanging on every outcome. Since playing my last game for the Northern Knights, things have changed significantly there. There's just something about the fact that I'm no longer competing for higher honours that's allowed me to appreciate one innings at a time. And I think if there's one key takeaway for anybody who's still playing the game, it's trying to find that. We are so easily drawn to focusing on outcomes when it comes to performance, when it comes to even a contract scenario, which is largely out of your hand. For example, if you're trying to get a contract, if you're trying to make a team, it's really easy to get into a rut of thinking this innings could make or break my career. And that may work for you. It didn't work for me. I put too much pressure on myself instead of just focusing on the real basics, the real core aspects of batting, watching the ball, learning to trust yourself, and just enjoying the whole process. So, yeah, I guess I used to feel like a constant unease, feeling of dissatisfaction at the fact that I was still playing club cricket and not in the professional ranks. I treated every innings as though I had to succeed because I thought the selectors would be monitoring my progress, thinking that my next innings would be the one that made a difference with my career progression. Inadvertently, I was trying to force the outcomes by focusing on it too much. It's much harder to play your best when that's your mentality. You need to live in the moment and play one ball at a time. But that's much easier said than done, as I've already alluded to. So while I wish I was able to harness this approach earlier in my career, I'm also grateful that I found it now. Batting is such a punishing art form. One measly error in your day, week, or month even of batting can be over. It's not an easy predicament to deal with, particularly as a young person when you're still temperamental. Emotionally, we're still very up and down as teenagers, or even in our early 20s. We don't necessarily have the key pillars in life set up where you can put cricket in a real clear perspective. And I think in some ways it's easier as a father to put batting and your results as a batsman in perspective because you have simply bigger fish to fry. The challenges become when you have more responsibilities, it's devoting the amount of time you need to your skills to ensure that you're giving yourself the best chance of success. So that leads me to my final point on this. Point number 4 is the skills required to be at your best as a batsman are somewhat paradoxical. You need the mental application, tactical awareness, and technical ability of a 40-year-old, but the physical prowess and lack of off field responsibilities of a 20-year-old. Is that why so many batsmen find their most productive years around the age of 30? Right, number 5, the satisfaction of scoring hundreds never fades. I just, other than the birth of my children and marrying my wife, there's just no other feeling that can replicate the feeling you get when you score 100. And if anyone has a different feeling, please get in touch. But as a batsman, that's ultimately what you're walking out to do, right? You're walking out to score hundreds, to win games for your team, to build partnerships. That's your job as a batsman, as I see it anyway. So 2024 season, I had a monkey on my back, not having scored a century since 2019. I scored 100, as I said, in the final innings of the season. That meant I'd gone 61 innings, which was I'd scored 1,951 runs in that time, 12 not outs at an average of 39.82 between hundreds. So I was being consistent, but when it was my day, I just wasn't making the most of it. And when it was my day, I was generally finishing 70 not out, chasing. I struggled to make the most of any start I got batting first, and that's the key. Obviously, when you're chasing, you can't control how many runs you're chasing. When you're batting first, you got a little bit extra time. So obviously, that 61 innings, that's a lot of training sessions, a lot of balls hit, a lot of hours of visualizing, and it always feels worth it when you get there and soak up the moment to celebrate. I guess it's a bonus if you can celebrate that with your friends and family, and thankfully this time my wife and kids were there, which was brilliant. I do pride myself on making big hundreds, not allowing myself to reach the milestone and then lose concentration. I really dislike hundreds under 115, even under 120, unless of course you're chasing or you got your 100 in the last over or whatever of a innings batting first. Once you get 100, generally speaking, every 10 runs you score is a little easier than the previous 10. So when you get to 3 figures, you owe it to your team to capitalize on the rhythm you have, and now it's your chance to really ram home that advantage. You're seeing the ball clearly, your confidence is high, and you're in a great position to score quickly. It's easily the most enjoyable time to bat. Step 6 of lessons learned in 2024. Enjoy the process. This has to be one of the most used modern day cliches. I am disappointed I was never able to appreciate it until probably the last 3 years. So what is that process? Well, for me, it begins with reviewing my last innings. How did I get out? What was I thinking when I got out? Was I fluent in my innings? Did I make technical, tactical, mental errors leading to my dismissal? Which type of bowler did I get out to? How did all of those variables compare to my previous dismissals? And are there any trends developing? So I tend to note down 2 to 3 key aspects I need to remedy. For example, I might be watching the ball all the way onto the bat. It might be managing a scenario in a better way. For example, like not taking a risk against that particular type of bowler in that particular stage of the game, or any technical improvements required when driving. For example, I need to play the ball later to maximize power. Then what I'll do during training is I'll set up a scenario that allows me to focus on these. It could be net session against bowlers where I'm focusing solely on watching the ball all the way onto the bat and not worry about any technical or tactical thoughts. Another option could be minimizing risks. For example, when playing spin, I might work on my footwork during training, focus on the trajectory out of the bowler's hand. I then can get well forward and well back, depending on whether the ball's tossed up or not. Whether it's flatter, I can then push back to pull and cut. When I do that well, I've little need to take other risks, and that's probably a key to my game. Is when I'm scoring well against spin, I'm generally going pretty well in the innings as a whole. Might also be driving technique. I can tend to be quite right hand or bottom hand dominant on my drives, and therefore I lose a little bit of accuracy in terms of where I'm hitting the ball. I'm not hitting the ball exactly where I like when I use too much bottom hand. So it's focusing on nice strong top hand, just sort of pinch grip with my bottom hand, getting throws from a consistent thrower and focus on hitting the ball directly into the ground off the bat, which is a telltale sign that I'm hitting the ball late under my eyes to maximize power. And the final lesson learned from the 2024 season, gonna sound a bit unusual. The idea is self one versus self two. So I reread the book The Inner Game of Tennis at the start of August, and it gave me the reminder I needed to trust my instincts. So I actually bought the book for my son. I thought it might be helpful. He's a goalkeeper in football, and well, he was at the time anyway. And I thought it might be helpful for him to understand how your mind can tend to play tricks on you. And he wasn't completely enamored with it straight away. So I thought, right, well, if he takes a wee while to come around to the idea of reading this book, I might read it in the meantime. It's a nice short book. I think it's only about 140 pages. And it is a bestseller. It is, I think it's sold, over 700,000 copies worldwide. So definite one I would recommend you all to read. So the premise of the book is that self one is essentially your ego, and self two is your body. And self one, the ego, wants to be the aspect of your mind that tells your body what to do. Self two being the doer, the action, the actor. So self one most likely doesn't trust self two. So self one believes that it needs to provide instruction to self two. However, when you consider something as simple as brushing your teeth, your body doesn't really need or require the instruction in order to know what to do, does it? So once it's learned, the basic action of a skill, it just knows what to do. When I say it, self two just knows your instinct, basically. That's what I view self two as, your instinct. Uh, in essence, that's what we need to learn when batting. We need to learn that encouraging self one to trust self two so that self two can focus solely on the ball and instinctively react to the ball that's bowled to us. When we do that well, as I understand it, that's when we start to enter the zone. That's where there's no thought and promotion from self one, just simple reaction from self two. And for anyone who's been there, what a feeling. I wish we could get there more easily. I wish we could get there more often. I guess that's the feeling that you yearn for, and certainly one that keeps me coming back season after season. So I actually experienced it the very week after reading the chapter Trusting Self 2. So I was batting in a league fixture against Estonians. First over, I think I was batting. I edged one short of the slip cordon, and it ran away for four. And I thought, well, that's lucky. On another day, that carries and is picked up and is caught. And my day is over very quickly. In the next over, I hit two pull shots for six over square leg as the swing bowler I was facing lost his length. They were completely instinctive. The ball hit the middle of the bat, and as I watched the ball sail over the boundary rope, my trust in self too grew significantly. So I ended up racing to 28 off about 18 balls, and it was all on boundaries, 4 4s, 2 6s. However, at that point, something interesting happened. As I write about it, self one must have lost trust or must have felt left out at that point, because I then remember thinking, you've had a good start, you need to make this one count. So there was a lack of trust in self two doing what self two had done so well to get from to 28 off 18. So instead of continuing to trust self two and let it do all the work, I then went into accumulation mode. I minimized risk and knocked the ball around for ones and twos. So in the end, I made a mistake running between the wickets and was run out for 57 off 60 balls. So my last 29 runs took 42 balls, which is much slower, right? We'd lost a couple of wickets with the bat, and I thought, once again, I thought I probably needed to hang around for a little bit longer, make sure the team gets a good score, because I felt like if we put a decent score on the board, we'd be a good chance of winning. Certainly if we got a below par 230, 240, the opposition were going to mop that up comfortably. So ultimately, it came down to a lack of trust in self too, which is, in some senses, it's disappointing, but I feel like it's also human nature. I'm really interested to hear from others regarding that and what your own experience with this is. It was like, you know, the early boundary spree that I had, 4 4s, 2 6s, and roughly my first 18 balls. it spurred me on. That experience spurred me on in the following weeks, where it reminded me what was possible in order to get back to that zone of total trust. But it is always easier said than done. So a couple of weeks later, same opposition, we found ourselves chasing 320 on a good wicket, quick outfield, good reward for good shots. I knew we wouldn't have to go ballistic chasing the total down, but there was also something about the total that put my nerves on edge, and I wasn't as fluent as I had been in the previous match. There were 3 short balls offered up by the same bowler who had pulled for 6 just a few weeks previous. This time, though, because we were chasing 320, I tried to overhit them, completely mistimed them. I think I missed 2. One I might have Q-ended. Um, and yeah, it wasn't something I was consciously doing, but something in my subconscious, some kind of stressor that was impacting my ability to be fluent. So that day, it took me longer to find my groove. I ended up making 34 of 48. I felt like I'd batted quite well when I was in the end shocked when I got off the pitch and realised how many balls I'd chewed up, which just reminds me, how funny things work sometimes. Your perception can be quite different based on what you're thinking at the time, what you're focused on at the time. So, to summarise the 2024 season, from a personal perspective, it is nice sitting here at the end of the year in the doom and gloom of early winter, looking back and feeling as though I did give myself the best chance of success given all my other responsibilities. However, I still ask myself, what could I have done better? So my strike rate across the season was 79. That's probably 5 to 10 runs per 100 balls too slow for my liking. How could I have scored quicker? I look back at my innings, 2 innings probably cost me in terms of strike rate. I got 24 or 54 against New Buildings in the Irish Cup, and then that 34 or 48 against Inst, where, yeah, had I been able to get closer to the zone, the level of trust that you need without letting the uncontrollables, the number of runs that you're chasing, without letting that dominate my thinking and feeling. That's the challenge in my mind. It's reaching the zone of total trust where you're just not letting anything else, any other variable involved in the game, into your mindset. So yeah, things I could do better: rotating the strike against a slow medium pace attack. Could look to drop and run a little bit more if I'm struggling. Like that 24 or 54 was a prime example, especially when actually I was batting with Jordan Neal and he was on fire. So just needed a look to try and rotate. I did find that in that innings against Estonians, the second one, definitely was on edge, sensing the need to get on with it, and so I did lack rhythm in the end. I was conscious that we were slipping behind the required rate, and there was some rain in the air and some rain forecasted, and I knew we needed to be around 100 for 1 after 20 overs to be in line with Duckworth Lewis. I just couldn't find my calm, relaxed state of mind, and I scored slowly when we needed to score 5 and over. So not a drastically unachievable rate. What I also believe I need to do is practice lofting the ball straight down the ground. So when I'm at my best, I'm confident in whacking the bowler straight back over his head. I haven't really practiced this enough, and therefore it's just not an instinct at this particular point in my career. So definitely something I can add to the priority list for next season. I have found over the years that I score quickest in the last 20 balls of my innings, especially upon passing 100. So with that in mind, if I'd have found a way to kick on with the starts I got against Waringstown, where I made 47 off 69 in a league match, Carrickfergus, I was slow again, 70 off 107, Cliftonville Academy, 46 off 65. Tricky wickets, those, so it's kind of understandable it's scored slowly. But if I just found a way to get through, not got out when I had, I feel like I could have caught up to close to a runner ball, if not better. So plenty to work on ahead of next season, and even more, motivation to hopefully kick on and gain that elusive team trophy. Well done for making it this far. I hope you found a little nugget in the podcast that got you thinking about how you can apply it to your game. If you'd like to discuss it, you can get in touch with me via our social media channels at Ali's Batting Mentality on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. And for those of you dinosaurs still roaming around X, my handle is Mark_Ellison. If you believe this discussion will resonate with someone you know, then please share it. It helps us to grow the channel and get even bigger names on the pod. Until next time, folks, what one action are you taking today to give yourself the best chance of success in your next innings?